Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Cameron Gallagher, and I realized there was no intro to this. Although this is a guy that doesn't need an intro because we were talking to Ryan Connolly from Film Riot, and basically we talked about the idea of sort of pitching films to companies and management companies and agencies and all that kind of stuff, and sort of how he's gone about it and what he thinks is, some of the best practices and maybe some of the worst practices. So, anyway, guys, let's get into the video. So, here we go.
So to jump into it, so what do you think that a lot of people don't know about sort of the agent and management process, and just the pitching process in general?
Well, I mean, if we're going by, me 2 years ago, not much of anything. I released Ballistic, and it was kind of like the end of my. I've talked about it on Film Riot before, but it was kind of like the end of my 5-year plan, and I've talked about what that meant to me plenty on the show, where it was like, checking off those boxes of things that I wanted to have experience in or be comfortable in, confident in, know how to handle as a director, as a writer, somebody who's the captain of the ship at that point, being able to look somebody in the eye and tell them, you can bet on me. I know what I'm doing now to some extent. It's just like getting married. You're never really ready to get married, but you can be as ready as possible, or having kids, all the same thing. And so Ballistic was kind of like the end of my 5-year plan. I purposefully made that as big as it was because I wanted to prove to myself that, I mean, if that was a feature and we didn't get favors, if we just paid for the whole thing, I think the number that we loosely came up with was like a $3 to $5 million feature. We had 100 people on day one, on set one day. I mean, it's pretty large for like that sort of thing. And practical explosions, wire work, stunts, 8 cameras, hyper slow-mo. And I wanted to make sure that I could, be the conductor of that much going on. And it was, compounded in difficulty by the fact that I was a producer on it. I was the studio, so that made it even more time consuming, more difficult. And of course I had amazing people helping, which is why it made it happen. But that kind of made it the end of like, the things I was trying to, the boxes I was trying to check. And so when that came out, thankfully it actually worked, because I was even telling my editor, Lucas, when we were cutting, was like, man, if this doesn't work, like I got to start a new 5-year plan. I don't know. This is the end of my, but producers came calling, and, there were several producers, like legit people at legit companies that you would have heard of. And they all wanted to talk about what a feature version of this would look like. And there were several talking to me at once. And it was just like, what? Now what? Like what? How does this world work? Do I develop with all of them? Do I tell them about each other? I don't know what this means. Like, it's very complicated. And it gets more complicated as you continue going. But I talked to a friend of mine who's in the industry, who's always told me, don't worry about getting a manager just yet. And then I told him what was going on. He's like, yep, now's the time. You need a manager. And I was like, cool. How? So then it came with this whole problem of, how do I even get a manager? So then I was asking friends, and it's a big ask to ask someone to pass you to their manager or mention you to them, because that's another thing in the industry. Like, everything's credit. Like, you have a certain amount of credit based off of maybe something that they've seen from you. And I have a way of rambling. So if at any point you need to rope me in, just let me know.
You're good.
So, say Ballistic gave me a little bit of credit. The people saw it. They liked what it was. They liked my style. Okay, this person has talent. And now everything you do will either improve that credit or, drop that down a little bit. So if my friend is passing my work to his manager, and his manager looks at it and is like, not great, that's not going to be great for his credit, so it's a big ask to do that. Like, I think one of the biggest, I mean, even for a manager to take you on and push your material, that's using their credit. So, they're building good graces with other people, that when they send them something, it's worth looking at. So they're very cautious about that. So that's probably one of the biggest asks that you could have of anyone, in my opinion, including, their time is obviously a huge one as well. But you know,
And it's scary, right? I mean, I know at least for me, it's like to have your stuff out there and to, hear these legitimate things and these legitimate people, and then to be like, yeah, can you check out my work? And you kind of feel like,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
hey,
I mean,
what are you
anybody
doing?
looking at your work at any time in any capacity is always like, oh no,
Yeah,
a little
exactly.
bit. It's always terrifying, no matter what.
Oh, for sure. But I feel like that's a nice thing too, is like having somebody that to either talk to or kind of look to as maybe even if it's not a mentor, but somebody that you can kind of like relate to or ask questions. Cause I feel like that was people that I had come out to and knew. I was like, hey, I don't know what's going on. Do you know what's going on?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And um, I mean, to finish up that story, long story short, I ended up finding managers on accident. I'm repped at 3 Arts now, but it was somebody that I was connected with through a friend who knew Luke Maxwell is one of my managers' name. I have two managers, Luke Maxwell and Will Robotham. And I had met Luke just through a phone call. A friend connected us as like, hey, you guys should just meet each other. And at the time, Luke wasn't even a manager yet, but he was in 3 Arts, I believe, as an assistant. So it's just like, here's me, this is what I'm doing. What are you doing? Cool. Maybe our paths will cross again one day. And then fast forward 2 years later, this is going on. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't even know how to get a manager. And I remember Luke, and I'm like, oh, you know what? Let me hit him up. Maybe he can give me some advice. And it was just like an email like, hey, man, if you're busy, no need to respond. I don't want to take up your time, but here's what's happening. If you have any advice for me, that would be huge. And he's like, hey, can we jump on a call? Turns out he's a manager now, and so I've been working with them for the past 2 years now. And they're incredible. And it actually goes back to that credit bit a little bit. Like, every meeting I have, people bring up how much they love Luke and Will and how great their taste is. And whenever they send them something, they're always looking at it. So it's something that I keep in mind, that if I'm going to send something to them, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that this is worth their time. Because if it's not worth their time, it's not going to be worth anybody else's time. So it's keeping that credit in mind as well. I kind of went on a ramble. I'm not sure that I've answered
That's 100%.
the question.
No, that's 100%. Because I just feel like people, and I think it was something that I didn't know about. Was like, exactly. It's like, how do you come across these people? And it's, you always kind of hear these stories, and I had sort of like slowly been working my way into knowing people that knew people. And then it's like, it's like the Kevin Bacon thing there, like the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It's like you're 7 degrees from a manager, and you just got to get to 1 degree.
Yeah. I think, it's all networking. It's all who you know. And I don't think that's comes from a place of like, well, some people are just lucky they know people. I think that's true. I think there's a very small percentage of people that's the case. I started in South Florida. I knew no one. When I even started Film Riot, it was my 9-year-old sister was helping me shoot stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, how old was Josh? I think 16 or 17 at the time, That's how I started. And then even while doing Film Riot, I didn't know anybody. Like, Film Riot was this backyard show where we just did stuff with duct tape and, it was looked down on for a very long time. And then, it started getting some respect. And then I reached out to people to help them. And, that ended up coming back to me to where they helped me out a little bit. And I think that's a huge aspect of it is how can you get yourself, because Film Riot definitely has helped a lot, of course, it's gotten the name out there, that's been a blessing for me, but it's been a lot of hard work. And I think even if it wasn't Film Riot, you're talking publicly with Film Riot, 11 years of beating my head against the wall to get where I'm at now. And I still haven't made a feature. And only for the past 2 years has it even been a possibility, So you got 9 years of, publicly beating my head against the wall to try to get, not counting all the time I put in before that. So you're really talking about, a good, if we want to give like a very conservative number, like 18 years, where it's really more like 20 of, just as much as it's seen on Film Riot is how I've always been, like just intense about filmmaking for whatever reason. But I'll just count from like 18 on, because that's when I really started getting some knowledge behind me, really starting making things. But even if you just want to count from film school, you're still talking 17 years of, every single day trying this thing, trying to figure, okay, now what's the next step? Now what's the next step? Now what's the next step? And that's how you get a manager. That's how you get an agent. That's how you get to the next step, is by constantly doing it and not just doing the same thing over and over again. how can I help these people? How can I reach out to somebody else? If here 5 years from now, where do I want to be? What step can I take right now that's going to lead me to that? Because if you're not taking steps toward that goal, if you're not trying to find like, what's that thing I could do right now to lead toward that, bullseye, you're either standing still or moving backwards, and really standing still is kind of moving backwards because time is moving forward and you're not. So, um, and those can be simple answers. It could be like, the next step for you could be maybe finding like-minded people in your area to do stuff with. And I think when it comes to those aspects, and one thing that was always very helpful for me, and I'm very glad that for whatever reason I would always had, was objectivity of where I was at, like where I was at industry-wise, where I was at creatively, where I was at experience-wise, where my talent was at. I've always been very objective of, not there yet, like very objective with my own work. And of course we all critique our own work pretty heavily, but I've always been real honest with myself of like, I could be proud of something and recognize that no one's going to take a shot on me yet. I'm not there yet, but wait, the next one I'll get even better. And the next one I'll get even better, so finding people that are at your level, because that's the other thing. Like there's some friends that I have that, early, I didn't even know that they were doing anything at all. And then the next thing I know, they're doing major features that you've heard of. And it's just, what? And we were just friends. But so not even considering that, like other friends that we've just helped each other out, and we're very much at a low level at one point, and now we're both almost making, you know what I mean? So you create these networks that over time build each other up. I think one mistake that comes from a lot of people is wanting to go from 1 to 20. That's just not the case. You need to go 1, 2, 3, 4, because when you do that, if you try to skip steps, and you're able to get yourself in front of, say, a manager or a producer, but you've skipped all these steps, they're going to know it. And, sometimes, and that was always in my head too, because, in my perspective, in my experience, and from what I've seen, you don't get many chances. So, if you blow it, it's going to be kind of hard, and you're going to have to wait a while, and you're going to have to rebuild things. And so, really waiting to push myself till I knew I wasn't skipping any steps, and again, this is all coming from my personal experience, my personal perspective. Everybody has a different path and a viewpoint. And, for some people, this might be like, no, this is just, for me and my experience. So I don't know if that answered the question a little 100%. More clearly.
No, I think that's perfect. And I think now kind of jumping into like, obviously the actual pitching process itself and concepts and all that kind of stuff. So one thing that I sort of realized very quickly in talking with some of these people was that there was what they're looking for, what you have, and what they know other people are looking for. In particular, like, okay, well, we know producers like this, and it's like, your story is this. So it's like, well, are you saying, do I move on that? Like, how do I, and I think that's one of the things that I find very interesting, and I want to get your kind of take on is, do you feel that you tailor any of the pitches to a producer or a studio, or do you feel like you're more or less like, I'm going to make this and we're going to find the producer or studio that want this?
Both. I mean, there's different paths to both of that. I have friends that did this is the movie I'm making, period. And we're going to, there's different paths to everything. I mean, the one thing I think to keep in mind that's really important to understand and keep in mind is that this is a business. It's a business. There's money changing hands. This has to make money. And the people that say yes or no are the people that are worried about the money, Mm-hmm. It's a company. They want to make something. They're going to invest in that. They want a return on investment. So, and it's true to an extent that nobody fully really knows anything. So everybody's guessing depending on that point, because there's things that's like, oh, that would never work. And then somebody does it and it's massive. And now it's like, well, let's do more of that, but that's not what, you know what I mean? So, I think there's both aspects. I wrote a film and it's very personal to me. And it's a little, it's not super different. It's not like it's not commercial. I think it is commercial. It's just different in the way that the first half of the movie is a drama. And then because of, the theme of the film, the characters, what they're going through at the midway point, it really starts to shift into horror, but it's about halfway into the movie before it really dives into, I mean, there's, you know, there's dread and there's moments of, you know, the creepy factor, and there's, you know, little horror moments. It's not like it's never a horror film and then all of a sudden, boom, it's a horror film. But it is like, you know, that Peter Berg thing of you're pulling back the bow, and then you like let loose and it just goes from there. And it's important to the film thematically, I think. You know, it's not really like, I don't want to bring, you know, too much horror early on. So that's, that's a place where it's like, you know, this is the story I'm telling. This is a story I want to tell, a story that's important to me. You know, and that, you know, gets sent around, and because it's a little bit different and because it's like that drama up front and that horror in the back, you know, it gets passed on. But, and it's not like, it's also not, you know, being, you know, it's great. And I know it's great, but people are passing on it. It's not that. This is literally what I'm being told. You know, I'm saying it because because obviously it's your work. You can't fully, you know, but it's what I'm being told. Like, you know, there's several people that have told me they're passing on it because of that. They loved it. And I got a meeting out of it because of how much they loved it. And they loved the characters and the story and the da-da-da-da. But, you know, it's kind of like a drama for the first half. And it's like, okay, I mean, fair enough. You know, they're worried that, how do we sell this movie? You know, because you also have a production company, and the production company isn't necessarily the one that is buying the movie. They're developing the movie with you to take somewhere to sell it. So like to a Netflix, say. So they're trying to bring stuff in to package that thing in a way that they could take to Netflix, knowing what Netflix wants right now. And that's what production companies are really great at, is knowing what Universal is looking for right now, knowing what Paramount's looking for, right? Because, you know, you got to think about it in terms of like these studios, like the Netflix and the Amazons. They have people there making the decisions who have taste. And this is what their taste is. And this is what they want to make. But also this is what they see from their demographic and what's working right now, what's not working. Well, we have a lot of horror right now on the plate. What else do you got? You know, somebody said to me recently. So there is that aspect. I had a general with a production company, which a general, I know, you know, but general is basically just meeting, like, here's us, who are you, what else are you working on? And that that took me a minute to figure out too. So I had the general, and I was thinking maybe we're going to talk about this property, and you know, we didn't. And then, you know, I had another one. It was kind of similar, and I wasn't ready for them. I didn't understand fully what these meant. And what it is you're getting a pocket of time to prove you're not a weirdo. You know, show who you are as a person, because they want to know, like, is this somebody I'm going to want to work with? They want to know your mind as a filmmaker. And I think they're able to gauge where you're at. Again, that what I'm talking about the, have you skipped steps? Like, they will know by what you're talking about. Like, does this person get it? Does this person know what this is? Can they speak our language? Meaning, do they have the experience to, like, you know, go through? And then you get a small window there to, here's what else I'm working on, and spit out a few things. And if, you know, while in the meeting just chatting, you can get a gauge of what their sort of, where their interests lie and what they're looking for. And then you pluck from those ideas. And some things have gotten some movement based off of just, you know, a verbal pitch in those meetings, where it's like, let me hear more about that. Do you have a treatment? Can there be one? You know, that sort of thing. So it's a little bit of both, you know, and your manager, if you can get a manager, they'll help with that and kind of guide. I mean, if you want to make romantic comedies, you shouldn't be forcing yourself to pitch horror films because they get picked up. That's madness. Make your romantic comedy. You know, if that's where your passions lie, you should follow that. So I would never try to chase something that wasn't me. Thankfully, like, I range widely in genre. I want to do most things. There's only a handful of things that I have zero interest in, but I have things that I want to do the most right now. And that's just what I'm currently chasing. Thankfully that's in line with what a lot of people are looking for, but yeah, it's a little bit of both. And then even if you pitch something and they're like, oh, you know, we like this, but we think it should be more like this direction, then you have a decision to make. Do you want to say, no, I'm going to look elsewhere and see if anybody else wants to do this and gets this? Or, you know, you say, okay, let's see what that looks like, you know? And there's an aspect of that to where it's like, there's something that I've been working on with a group recently. And, the decision was like, okay, do I want to shift gears and do it more like this, to be able to do it with them? And, on the conversation, they really got the heart of it. They got what I was going for. They got the vibe of it. They were really smart. Their notes are incredibly smart. Their track record is incredible. So it's like, okay, yes, this feels like, a good path for this thing. And I think there's also differences in properties. Like, there's one thing that I'm working on where, no, this is it. This is what it is. It has to be this. But then there's some other stuff that I'm working on where it's like, here's the core, but it could go in these different directions. Like, there's a version of it that's this, and there's a version of it that's that. And I want to make both of those movies. So it's like, as long as that core element's still in place, it's like, okay, well, how do we evolve this into the thing that's going to best tell that core element? So it's sort of a different beast altogether. And, it's just a matter of working with each other to, find that thing that you both agree on. And I love collaboration. I love notes, especially from obviously from smart people, So there's been a lot of notes and a lot of conversations that keep pushing this harder and further. And, here's an idea. And it's okay, that's cool. But what if you didn't do that and you went more in this direction? Let me know what you think. And go away and be like, okay, well, let me try to do this. And oh my God, this is way better. You're right. Check this out. Okay, that's cool. But what about this? Okay, let me go away. And, and it keeps evolving and it keeps getting smarter. It's just a different process, so I think it really just depends on you. I think I have some filmmaker friends that are like, this is what I want to make, period. And then, there's others that are a lot more flexible. And I think there is a way, which is what I'm currently doing, to stay true to yourself as a storyteller, while also staying very flexible within a collaboration. So as long as that thing doesn't stop being the original intention, the icing can change as long as the cake underneath is the same, and that's kind of how I go about it. As long as we're not leaving into something that I'm like, I don't like this, or this is not a kind of movie I want to make, or this is no longer recognizable from my fundamental, like my core idea. I'm totally down to, where else could this go? What makes the best version of this thing?
Yeah, I think it's the thing too, 'cause it's like, obviously they know what they're talking about, where it's like, if they're a studio, they know what sells. So it's like, maybe, take into consideration what they're talking about and then sort of see from there okay, does it fit within what I want to do, or does it not fit within what I want to do?
Yeah. And, going back to like that idea of credit, like, that's another, thing in my mind of like, if this one thing that it's really personal to me and it's not really getting any movement right now because of, what type of thing it is, maybe I don't have the credit to really get anyone to back it right now because I haven't made a feature before. You got to keep that in mind. Again, staying objective. So maybe if I do a thing or two and that builds up my credit, maybe then I can come back and do that thing that's so personal to me and, there's like Ari Aster. I'm pretty sure that's what happened with Midsommar, however you want to pronounce it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's how it happened with that. Like, he already had that, but it was just so weird. It wasn't happening. But then Hereditary came out and everybody was like, oh, okay. Okay. And then, and then he was able to make that one. I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure I read that, but that might be totally false.
I don't know. I like binged his shorts on Vimeo like a couple months back.
Same.
And I was just like, oh, this guy, everything is weird.
He's crazy, man.
Oh, he
but I love him. But that happens all the time. I know of several instances where that happened. You come back to the thing that you really want to make after you build some credit. So, that's an aspect of it too, but not lying to yourself and just, I'm an artiste and only an artiste, not pretending it's not okay. Be an artist with your own money then,
Right.
If you're asking other people to give you millions of dollars, that has to be a part of your thought process. It's gross to add the business aspect into the creative, of course. And it's really difficult to navigate, those worlds, but you have to keep that in mind to be able to navigate it.
Now, what do you think when it comes to the assets that you're coming there with, whether it be to these whoever you may be pitching this to, what do you think is like the most important thing? Is it, once you obviously have the story down and you know what you have, or you know what you want, what type of material do you think is like necessary? I've heard things from one pagers to pitch decks to all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I don't want to come off like I have the answers here. I've
Yeah.
been, yeah, I would say that I'm in this world for 2 years now. Like I dipped the toe in a bit here and there before that, but really in it consistently 2 years. And as far as like straight up pitching to like larger studios and whatnot, or production companies rather, 6 months, 7 months, before that it was writing and prepping and building and thinking and learning. And then it was finally like, okay, fire away. Let's, again, not skipping any steps, just pushing that over and over and over again. So, I'm still learning, man, like to be entirely honest with you. And it's been very confusing and like, well, what should I, and having a manager and stuff like that is just like heaven sent to really like, helping you figure that out and like, don't do this, do that. And then you get to send those materials to them and then be like, well, try this or try that. But also you are you. So, I've done things that my managers didn't ask for, but I know how people are. And, we've shown our stuff to tons of people and we've let tons of people read our stuff and we know how that feels and we know the reaction that we usually get and how that goes. So it's like, how can I convey without, confusion, what it is I'm trying to make? Film is a visual medium, right? So I'm going to send you a Word document, right? Like, how does that, and you're going to see what I'm seeing? Like, you could start reading a script, not knowing the genre, and read it entirely wrong for a while until you're finally like, oh, this is kind of funny. They're not being dead serious here, right? So without that, like setup, because you don't have the music, you don't have the performance, you don't have, the visuals, you don't have that general vibe that you're able to create within that final piece when you're just, so if I'm not pitching it to you like this, if I'm going to send you materials, how can I convey that? And so I've started doing something that I call like visual treatments. So, normally you'll see a treatment that's, say 30 pages and it's like, a script, it's documents, it's, laying down, what is this thing? And I've turned it into, not a comic book, but like almost like a graphic novel in ways, like Sandman style in a way where it's not like, it's just like images. So instead of doing like a lookbook or at the end visuals, which is cool, but it's like, and you have a lot of pitch decks that will be visual and you'll have sort of a page, but it's like, how can you connect the words to the emotion or the experience of the thing you're trying to convey? Well, if you're getting visuals that are immediately interacting with the words that came before it or after it, well, now you're crafting an experience that is at least in the lane of the thing you're wanting to make, right? So a big thought process behind that was, graphic novels and stuff when you look at it in that way, and you're getting that experience. So if you could bring that, I find that like really, really helpful to get everyone on the same page right up front. So like there's no misunderstanding of what it is I'm wanting to make. But that, that's talking about a treatment. Earlier on, you have maybe a small pitch, but again, instead of, just writing, black letters on a white page, I always make it visual. Like I pretty much never, unless it's just like a Q&A sheet, it's like, here's some questions you might have and here's answers to those questions. But even that, I'll put it at the end of like my visual deck, but say it's just like this, director's statement, pitch deck, whatever it is. I'll always make that visual. I'll go out and find images. I'll, take it all into Photoshop and every page is laid out. And if the film is supposed to feel a little, grim, grainy, I add grain, I give it that, like, how do I want you to feel when when you're watching the film? That's how I want you to feel when you're looking at these images. What will invoke what I'm wanting. And if I could do that right up front, the title page and those images there and the vibe, the colors that I'm giving you on the title page, when you turn the page, you're already there. You know, that's my music. That's the music setting the tone for what you're about to read. So I really like to think about that. And I think that there's no one right answer either. It's like, you know, what are you wanting to do? What are you wanting to convey? And go down that path. And it also depends on the situation, you know, like there's been generals where I'm just verbally pitching. That's all it is. And then I like to have, if I'm verbally pitching something, sometimes some stuff I'll do like a really soft pitch on, like, here's a general concept. So there's this guy and this girl, and it's based on this sort of thing. And, you know, it's this type of movie. Imagine this meets this meets this, and you compile them all together and you have this, and here's the hook, and here's why I think an audience is going to like, and this is what excites me about it, and da, da, da. I'm still working on it, still fleshing things out, you know, that sort of thing. I've done plenty of that and gotten a little interest of this and that. But if I'm really going to pitch something, like, let me tell you about this. I want to have at least like a little pitch deck, like a 10-pager that gives the concept, that has those visuals. That way, if I hook them enough for them to be like, well, what's that? Right? I could be like, oh, I have some material we could shoot your way. And that's happened a few times. So being prepared is more important than anything else. And obviously, if you have reps, they're definitely going to help you with all that. Like, hey, what sort of stuff can I? King is scripts. If you have like finished like feature length scripts, even in rough drafts, man, that's gold. Because that's stuff where it's like, oh, okay, well, we can look at this entire thing and see what we think about it. And all this work is already done. Now we just got to get in, and even if it's entirely reshaping it, there's such a foundation there. And people definitely seem to love that. But then there's, some who want to be there from the ground up and they really want to help shape it from the very beginning. So, all of the above, the pitch decks, the mood boards, the, treatments, if you have them, if you have stuff that you're really confident in, really excited about, spend the time and build out those treatments, build out what it is that you're wanting to make, and add a visual component to that, to really convey your vision. Cause maybe it ends up being something like my script, where it's like, so far there's no real movement on it, but it's opened a ton of doors. So maybe just seeing your vision and like, oh, I like this guy or girl. I like their style. I like their voice, and look at this other work that they've done. And this is interesting. What else do you have? So I think just building, a folder of tons of stuff ready to go is so important. And it's pretty much all I do right now. I do Film Riot. I pitch what I currently have, and I'm working on new stuff. And what else could be in my, in my back pocket here that I could pop out, like, oh, what about that? Oh, you want that sort of thing? Well, look at this. I have this for you. How about that?
That's ironic.
Yeah. There's been one or two meetings where, like I said, if you kind of gauge what they're looking for just in conversation. And so I plucked one of the ideas based on that. And then what was end up said is, we just had a conversation with Netflix, and that ticks every box of exactly what they're looking for, which goes back to exactly what you were asking of like, do you tailor it for that stuff? I mean, if you're passionate, some of your stuff just might tick those boxes already. But then it's just, you got to make that decision for yourself. I'm jumping backward a little bit, but you got to make that decision for yourself. And, are you willing to bend or not with the things you're wanting to do, and how far are you willing to bend, and what are you not willing to bend on, and so on.
Yeah. So final question.
Again, I could ramble forever.
That was perfect. Oh, I can listen. I can listen forever. It's all right. So if I got a final question for you, so that's, what do you think is the biggest mistake that you've made, or maybe you've heard someone make during this process, or like something that people should really be like, hey, watch out for this, because this is something that could, easily go wrong or steer you in the wrong direction?
I think, not being ready for it. I didn't have stuff in my back pocket. I had a lot of concepts, but I didn't have, pitchable ideas, just, saying there's a bus and it can't go below 50 because there's a bomb on it. Okay, cool. That's a concept. That's a really cool concept, but what is it? Do you know what that movie is? Me neither. It could be a dead serious action. It could be an action comedy like Rush Hour, So I had a ton of those. And I had a couple of things that were a little built out, and, especially if you're going to make short films, always is like when I make short films like Ballistic and Sentinel and God, the Proximity, those are the ones I consider short films. The rest of them I kind of considered stuff that I was doing to learn and to show what I learned on Film Riot, right? Like we did like a 5 action scene month. We put out these, and they weren't shorts. I mean, what else are you gonna call them? So we just call them short. We tried to call them sketches at one point, but everybody was confused. So we're like, whatever, let's just call them shorts. Who cares? But I don't consider those short. I think, I consider I publicly made like 4, maybe 5 short films, but there's like 16 out there, and I just don't consider those short films. I consider those like, learning experiences for me and, our viewers. And when I do make shorts like Sentinel and, like I said, Proximity and Ballistic, I do like to keep them a little bit vague and a little bit open. It was a bit of a device that was given to me like a long time ago, and I followed it because it really vibed with me. Like, I don't want to make short films. I want to make feature films, or, long format series. I really want to dive in and give you a character and a world and for you to, digest that. I don't want to, do the 3-minute, like, here's the entire story. I just don't want to. Like, I want to entertain you for that 5 to 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever it is. But I'm not looking to like dot every I or cross every T. And, one of the reasonings for that is it leaves it open for a producer to be like, well, this is really cool. What is this? And what can it be? Like, what's the feature version of this? Because you haven't answered all the questions. It's an open, book. I mean, look at Lights Out. That answered nothing. It's literally a concept and an effective one. And it became a feature, Ballistic doesn't answer any like world questions, like what is happening. I mean, I try to like, that's one of the things that's fun to me too, because another reason I like to do it is because it's kind of training you to how little can I give you and you to shape it in your mind without me ever saying. If I just say 3 words instead of 30, can I kind of send you in a direction? Like, I know I haven't told you, but if I give you these like little breadcrumbs, will you follow a direction? And what direction will that be? What will you end up thinking? It is also just a really fun experiment in, what will the audience pull from this thing that you're giving them to help you understand how your audience is interpreting what you make in kind of a very like focused way, because inevitably people are always putting their theories into the comments. So you get to go read that. Well, I mean, after you pass by a bunch of people being pissed off that it's too vague.
Right. Yeah. They're like, I don't get it. You're just like, okay.
Yeah, totally. But then you get to all like the theories, like Proximity had so many theories and some people nailed it. Like some people got exactly what I was doing, what the larger world was, all that stuff. I don't think I ever saw Ballistic, like anybody nail it with Ballistic, but there's still a lot of interesting ideas. I was like, it's kind of close.
Yeah.
But it's a cool way to like, There Comes a Knocking, the short film, was interesting in that, like, if I show you the decaying roses and then I show you what she's doing and I show you the picture, like, if I add those ingredients, are you there already? Or is it when the message replays, which I don't know if you've seen it or not.
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh, I was there. Right.
Thanks, man. So is it, when the message replays, is that when you get it? Which, my intention was hopefully most people would kind of get it, like what's going on exactly. And then the second she replays it, you're like, oh, and I'd never expressly said a single thing. I've just given you breadcrumbs, and now what, and it's like, I think that's so much more rewarding. And I think that's so much more of a fun, interactive, interesting, impactful way to tell stories. So it's why it's been, what I've chased my entire career, because I don't want a passive viewer. I want you involved in the story that's being told. Just like, we're having a conversation now, you interject, you're a part of it. That's what I love about, those kinds of stories, is the filmmaker allows you to be part of it. You're thinking like, oh wait, well, if it's that, and then the second that it's, oh, and you get to have that great moment to where you're connected with the story, and the story allows you in to be more impactful. I've gone on a total rant.
No, I know you're, because I feel like you can engulf yourself in those stories more too, where it's like,
yeah,
you can't, sometimes I feel like I can't get into a story when it's telling me everything, because it's like, now it's a painting on a wall. It's not the outside. I don't know what's around the corner of that tree, but in a painting, I know it's just that tree. So it's like,
Right.
it is what it is.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it's, I mean, I'm going off on 1,000 different directions, but not having, like, when you make the short film and you keep it vague, so hopefully maybe somebody will come a knocking, not having what the feature version
I could
on brand, baby, always on brand.
Yeah, it's like, you can't turn it
Not
off.
having what that, a pitch for that larger world can be a mistake. Like I think just always, luck favors the prepared, always being as ready as you possibly can and putting in that effort, because, I had somebody working for me, and they would get frustrated because it would be like, hey, build this thing. And then we didn't use it. Like, build this thing. And then we didn't, use it. Not because we're just not using it. It was like, I don't like it, tear it down, let's do it this way. And then do it. And then it was like, I built this thing 3 different times. I was like, how many times am I going to build it? I'm like, until it's right. You know what I mean? And then they're like, what a waste of time. And I'm like, is it? Let me ask you something. Do you know how to do X? Well, yeah. Did you a week ago? No. Do you know how to do this? Yeah. Did you a week ago? No. So how is that a waste of time? So now when we build it the 3rd time, do you know how to do all these things plus? And is it going to be 10 times better than the first one you built? Yeah. Okay. You didn't waste your time. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's you're constantly perfecting. You didn't know how to do one thing and now you do. Or maybe you did know, quote unquote, but did you understand it? When I made Tell the way back and released it in 2012, and I left it feeling like that's when we shot it, because I thought it would be really lame to tell that I shot it in 2008, which is when I actually shot it. And I just sat on it because I wasn't ready to really be able to finish the edit or have the right composer for it, which I knew was going to be a huge factor. So when we released it in 2012, I made the decision, let's let everyone think that we did it now. That way, it won't be lame, that people will be able to feel involved in everything. And which was really scary, because this is 4 years ago that I shot the thing, and I'm releasing it now and not telling people that it was 4 years. So I would have much rather just been like, I shot this 4 years ago, so don't judge me.
Yeah, right.
Just,
Like,
whatever, let's just release it and let the audience enjoy it more, and now I don't mind talking about it. It was a couple years after that I came clean, was like, yeah, I shot in 2008. But back in 2008, when I made that thing, it was a lot of, well, in theory, I think if I do this, it'll be this. Now it's, if I do this, this is what, you know what I mean? It's that
Yeah.
experience and that building the wall, tearing it down, building the wall, tearing it down, over time, that allows you to more confidently make intellectual choices that will, breathe that end result that you are specifically looking for. So all that stuff is just really important. So it's not like, even if you build out this treatment that never sees the light of day, that was not a waste of your time. That was draft 1. Make 1,000 drafts.
Mhm.
I don't even know how many opening scenes I've written and then just track, closing scenes, and then just 2 people sit at a table. What are they talking about? And I write it, little things that I shot, edited, and then no one ever saw ever. Like, the stuff that's online is, half of what, you don't always have to put stuff up for people to see. A lot of it is just putting in the work to, make you, like, you're in there, you just have to bring it out because you're not intentional yet, So
Yeah.
it's not a waste of time. But I think the big mistake is just not putting in the time before you have the opportunity to be prepared for that opportunity. I think that's the biggest mistake, and one that I made to some extent. When it first started, I wasn't ready with that. And even like 2 of my first generals that were really solid meetings, I kind of, I wasted because I wasn't ready with material. And then after like the second one, I really figured it out. I was like, damn. And I just went away and locked myself in the room and wrote up a ton of stuff. And I was like, all right, I have 3 things that I'm super stoked about. So now for the next one, I'm ready. And then everyone after that, I had something that I could pitch, and that made all the difference in the world. Even just, from being like, okay, nice to meet you, bye, to, pitching these things to where it's like, well, you know what, let me shoot you my email. Anything that you have, feel free to send it to me. That was the difference. That even if they didn't respond to the pitch I was giving, they responded to, me, the filmmaker, hearing all this stuff like, oh, I like I don't want any of those, but I really like the way you're thinking. And I can see the passion, and, you know, you're putting in the work, you know, here's my email, you know,
You made that connection.
Yes, exactly. Whereas with the other two, when I didn't have those things, crickets, you know, that did not happen. But pretty much every meeting after that, having that stuff, a version of that happened. So, you know, again, I just think you could boil it right down to just putting in the work to be prepared for, you know, the eventual opportunity. Because I think, you know, you pound on the door long enough, someone's going to answer. Yeah, you know, even if that, you know, someone is, you know, a fundraising site to help you make your first thing. You know, you just gotta, you know, keep moving toward that thing, and not feeling entitled to it. You know, I've known some people who feel like they're entitled to it, that, you know, complain like, I've been trying so long and nobody will, you know, even blah, blah, blah. Well, you know, they're not entitled to. You're not entitled to their time, you know? So it's like, just keep putting in the work, and eventually something, you know, even if it's like, you know, the lowest budget feature ever. I know some people that were like, you know what, screw this. And they went off and made a feature for like 10 grand. And then that took them to the next phase of their career. So again, it's that, what's the bullseye I'm trying to hit? You know, what can I do to take me toward that bullseye? And again, all my perspective, you know, there's a ton of
I think it's a good one.
You know.
So a big thanks to Ryan Connolly again for coming on the show, and a big thanks to all of you for watching. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later.